PLD. PJ Campbell. 2 mediocre white dudes on film. Because frankly, we know you don't have enough of that in your life. So we're here to give you more. And without further ado, here are 2 mediocre white dudes on film. I gotta say something.
Oh my god, you motherfucker! You fucking jumped over me.
I did finally. Well, you do it to me every time, so I did it this time. All right, this might sound like I'm high, but I'm not. I have the StreamYard in a window, Chrome window. Now, when I had the 2 mediocre that video playing over the top,
right,
I decided to shrink my screen, and all of a sudden, like, I saw us in the background because the thumbnail got really small and then had to readjust. So I started playing with it during the opening. I sound like I'm high. I know it really
this is why we can't have nice things. Number one, there's only supposed to ever be one of us at one time who's stoned on here, and it's way too early for me to be doing that right now. So I'm not.
I wish I was. I wish I had an excuse, but I'm just me being entertained by.
I mean, I'm happy for you. I think.
Oh well.
I don't know. I can't help you with this. I just sit here and I go, "That's nice, Paul. I'm really happy for you." You know, like I guess it's the season of giving is what they call it. So, here, I'm happy for you. Let me give you this happiness of you being you.
Yeah, well, I'm very happy being me. So I appreciate that.
I mean, you know what? I would hope that you like being you. I would hope you embrace being you in the same way that we have people in our lives who embrace their own sides of themselves and their bad takes, like having Eternals as one of the worst MCU movies.
What is
Pardis?
That? Who is that? Pardis.
We have a group chat for this entire PLD projects thing.
That's and patreon.com/PLD projects.
Boy, it's there's some stuff going on in there this morning, and it's just a nightmare. Look, even I woke up to it, and there's just bad takes left and right, and we had Jeff like poking that and making it happen
as he does.
He
lives for chaos.
He lives for chaos. It's very fucking clear. I'm sitting there. I wake up and I was just like, I'm going back to bed. It's way too early for this. But no, I don't get to go back to bed because I have to do this podcast about Final Destination 3 instead.
And I will formally apologize.
Okay.
I'll formally apologize. I did say that I did make PJ get up an hour earlier than he needed to because for some reason I thought that Tucson was still on California time. I'm used to working California time because I do the Patreon, obviously, for Christian Harloff, so I do his schedule and stuff. I schedule things out in Pacific time. So that's what I kind of just been picturing. So I needed us to go at like 11:30 a.m. my time. I'm like, okay, that's got to be 8:30 PJ's time because he's out west because that's what it used to be. And all of a sudden,
used to be 3 years ago, motherfucker.
I know, but I keep forgetting. I keep thinking you're out that. I think for me, there's Eastern time and Pacific time. Anything else doesn't count. I'm sorry, it's not a real time zone.
You want me to quit this thing? Because I live in a time zone that
but doesn't really exist.
Almost Jerry Seinfeld. Did you hear my voice there? It went real high. Jerry Seinfeld. Yeah. What do you mean? Like that's how I feel about this situation.
If you're Jerry Seinfeld, I'm definitely George Costanza. I think that's how this thing's
It's so weird because I always thought I was more the George Costanza, but maybe not. Have you ever watched Curb Your Enthusiasm?
The funny thing is I never really did. I kind of saw a couple episodes. It didn't really quite get the magic back to me, but I kind of want to sit down with it again at some point because I had that before.
That show is incredible because it's like we all know that George Costanza is based off Larry David.
Right, absolutely.
It is 12 seasons of a TV show about George Costanza, played by Larry David, being the worst.
Yes, that's what I keep hearing. I want to do actually.
And it's incredible. And of course, like season 7 is an all-timer, especially for Seinfeld fans, because the whole season is about NBC wanting them to do a reunion show, and none of them want to do it. But so they start to build the reunion show, and then the finale, they do the reunion show within the show.
Right.
So like they actually film it, and it's the entire episode is people watching the reunion as it's airing.
Right.
So they they actually did an episode of Seinfeld within it
Herb really, yeah.
It's so good. It's so brilliant. Like it's such a good season. I love that show. I live for that show.
I had to put it on my queue. I'm doing a Parks and Rec right now. I did need to do Community at some point. Maybe I'll put that.
I'd put Curb over Community.
Okay.
I know that's like the hottest take, but Community is great for 3 seasons. It's fine for a 4th season. Season 5 is not very good, and season 6 is okay. I think that Community kind of falls off a cliff after season 3 and never quite recovers.
It's funny because I have a lot of sitcoms. I missed a lot of sitcoms. Like I watched them back in the '90s, like Friends, and I did like How I Met Your Mother when that came out after that. But then I kind of just like went off a cliff and never watched any sitcoms. So I'm so far behind on like all of these sitcoms.
I think the only one that for a while that I was keeping up with outside of Curb, and I don't even watch it now, but I was for a while, was the Goldbergs. Because I really liked the Goldbergs. No, it's featuring Jeff Garlin of Curb Your Enthusiasm.
Correct. Yep.
But I'm such a fan of like that 80s nostalgia, and I like the cast. I thought it was just like a really fun show.
I watched sporadic episodes of that for the exact reason I'm a big 80s guy, obviously.
Yeah.
And they had some special episodes which I definitely want to check out. I never watched it like consistently, but I did like what I saw. Like I love the Robert Englund coming back for Freddy Krueger. I love that.
Rick Moranis coming back as Dark Helmet.
Right, good stuff.
Obviously. Kevin Smith directed a couple of the episodes, which is very cool. Like the Batman 89 episode was like fantastic.
Top notch, right?
Yeah. There's just all sorts of stuff in that show. And you know, the thing I like is that it lives in the perpetual fantasy of 1980 something. Like that's how every episode starts. Nothing's ever like chronologically correct. And I kind of like that the play is that our memories are, you know, time and memories don't really overlap the right way. So you can think certain things were one way, but they're not. And it's always worked in the show's advantage of just being like a fantasy about whatever.
Right.
And it's really surprisingly charming. That's one I'd like to get back into. Right, I really liked that show. Speaking of, did you see the trailer for that 90s show?
I did. That's a show I did watch. I didn't watch consistently throughout its run, but I definitely have seen like almost all the episodes. Like I had like seasons where I watched most of them.
Yeah, for those who are unaware, there's a sequel to that 70s show starting on January 19th. Hey, happy birthday to me. Of that 90s show. And it picks up 20 years later in Point Place.
Yes.
And Eric and Donna have a daughter who is going to stay with Red and Kitty for the summer.
Right.
And it looks just like the original, but it is so clear that the focus is more going to be Red and Kitty, and I could not be more hyped about anything in my life, because in hindsight, and even rewatching the show recently because it's finally streaming on Peacock, dude, Red and Kitty are that 70s show.
You know, it's funny you say that because I remember watching the trailer, and it's always very tricky to try to recapture something that hit. Like, and I had the mixed feelings about, like, I see the kids in the basement doing a thing. I'm kind of like, it's just like, it felt like the Dukes of Hazzard when they had like Luke and Bo's cousins take over for a little bit. It's just
for that one season.
For that one season when they were like in kind of some kind of disagreement over their contracts.
Their contracts.
Coy and Vance, I think they were called. That's how old I am. I remember as a kid watching that going, what the hell? I gotta say fuck, but at the time I was like, oh, where the fuck is Luke and Bo? What the hell? Who are these fucking guys?
Yeah. Who are these assholes?
Who are these? But the same way, so kind of gives me that feeling, kind of like, oh, but then you do see Red and you do see Kitty, and they start leaning into them more. And it's a smart decision. It's a very smart decision. Not only is it because they're legacy characters, because of the two probably the two best actors on the show in the history of the show anyway. I don't mean everybody's done all these things, but those guys know what they're doing. Those are like Red. Oh my God, he's a lot.
Kurtwood Smith is one of the all-time great character actors who's ever lived.
Yes, he is in my Ed Harris Hall of Fame kind of thing. He's one of those guys that he put him in a movie. Absolutely makes it a better movie. And you need that kind of guy to make it make movies. The best movies always have those kind of character actors in there to really give it like a depth depth, and he does that. And Kitty the same way, same thing. She's a phenomenally funny actress. Like her
Yeah, I
scene
love Deborah Jo Rupp.
in WandaVision was great. She was like magnetic for her short amount of time in there. She's done
Of
a lot
course,
of
you know, some people remember her from Friends because she played
Absolutely.
Giovanna Ribisi's wife.
Yep, yeah, that's right. Absolutely. I almost forget that when I think about it when I see her in the clip. I'm like, oh my God, that's right. She's a phenomenal actress. So concentrating on those two, I will say you do run the risk when you take supporting characters and focus more on them. That's always kind of a risk of being like, is it too much now? Because it sometimes less is a little more in these kind of situations. But I don't think it's going to be in this case, guys. I think that when you said when you watch it back, they're really like low key the stars.
They're 100% low key the stars, and that's why I was so excited because even like we forget too, even like the final line of the show comes back to Red. Like the whole thing ends up being that he's gonna put his foot up Kelso's ass on New Year's Eve. Like that's how the show ends.
Right, exactly.
It's incredible. This show knows exactly what it is, and I can't wait to see most of those cast members back. I never thought William Valderrama would even want to like come back as Fez.
Yeah,
because I knew he had been very vocal about maybe we went too far with the character and things like that in hindsight. But I was happy to see that he decided that he was down to come back. Same with Kutcher, same with Kunis. And it's not like they don't have things going on. Hell, Topher Grace has his own sitcom now on ABC. It's not like he needed to come back for this. But the fact that all of them are obviously sans one for reasons I do not want to get into.
Totally different. Totally get it. Obvious reasons. Yeah.
But I'm just happy that they're back. I mean, it looks fun. As far as legacy sequel type things go, it could be very good. It could be very bad. You run the risk of the Girl Meets World, which I was also a fan of, but Girl Meets World was at its best when it was focusing on the legacy characters.
Not just it, you have those legacy characters you love. Try to introduce a whole new set of characters. It's almost impossible for them to live up to your memories of these characters. You know what sitcom did do it pretty well, though. I will say.
Which one?
You know, I said, you know which one is How I Met Your Father.
Oh yeah, actually, you know what? And it's funny you say that because I was the one who pushed you to watch that.
Yes, because I love How I Met Your Mother, but I never got around to it. So I finally rewatched all of How I Met Your Mother, and I went into How I Met Your Father, and it did feel a little off at first. I'm going to say, like, I don't know if I get these guys. I don't know if I like these guys. But they did eventually hook into me to the point where I'm now looking forward to season 2 and seeing where we're going with this. And not just because of the Robin Scherbatsky cameo at the end, although I did love that too. And I would always welcome guests from the legacy characters there as well. But it gets to the point now it doesn't feel like it needs it.
No, they did that one the right way because the DNA was the same. The only fear I have for season 2 right now is that it's going from 10 to 24 episodes.
Yeah,
and
scary.
That's a real like
a big jump.
Couldn't that just be 2 seasons instead? Like, you know what I mean? Do 2 episodes or 2 seasons of 12 instead? Like, I've made it no real secret on here when we've talked about television that I much prefer shorter seasons these days. Life is way too short to have long seasons. Sitcoms get away with it because they're shorter, but even then you run the risk of outstaying your welcome.
100%. I'm actually right on board with you. For a long time, the industry standard was like 20 episods. But every time you got 20 episodes, usually. Or 20, between 20 and 24.
Yeah,
like it was always like that range. And it always was horrible even for dramas and other even genre shows because you definitely ended up with a lot of filler episodes that way. And they were fine, but like it's kind of like made it like, well, why are we here this long? What are we doing in this episode? Sitcoms the same way, although sitcoms are just like you only have so many jokes and you're going to try to spread them out over 24. It runs the risk of boring you and losing you very quickly.
It's so funny you bring that up because I think about Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D.
Okay.
And Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. like notoriously was known for its first season where people were like, man, it's just spinning its wheels. And that could not have been more accurate. Had that show's first season only been 13 episodes and you started at mid-season, you would have basically started with where the show got good, which was that episode Turn, where it linked into Winter Soldier and like you start to see the downfall of S.H.I.E.L.D. and stuff.
Right.
The problem was with 24 episodes, you had to buy your time to get there. And so the first half of that season is padded to shit.
Yeah.
And like most of it doesn't have any effect on the later thing other than you get to know the characters. But even then, I would much rather we had started with like 3 episodes before. So you say it's like a 15 episode season or whatever.
Right.
And then you start with turn. At least then story wise, I'm hooked in. I may not know the characters yet, but I can learn about them over the course of the rest of it.
There's definitely a delicate balance. There seems to be this I don't know, way to look at things. Where like if it's too actiony, you don't get to know the characters, and the characters suffer, and you don't love them as much. And that can be true. That can be true when you skip it too much, and like the characters become like stereotypes or archetypes rather than actual fully fledged characters. But there is a way to do it, and if you hit that perfect mark, then you have the best kind of television. You don't have to waste time in things. You learn stuff as you're going along, and you, by the end of the episode or end of the season or whatever, close to the season, not only are you into the story, you are into the characters to that point, and it comes together as a magical solution in a way.
You know what show was great with that?
What's that?
Lost.
Yeah, I get that.
And Lost also had the problem of being 24 episodes until it wasn't.
Right.
But Lost was always great at building the mystique around the characters and then slowly peeling back the onion as you start to discover who they all actually were before the island or after the island, depending on what was happening. But Lost was always really good at building its characters out in that capacity. And that's one of the legacies of that show for me. I think it's one of the last all-time great shows at that, actually.
Yeah, you're not wrong. You're not wrong. I think like I agree with you now that I think the perfect time frame for stuff is probably 12 episodes, 10,
yeah, 12, 10 13 episodes.
13.
It depends too, because like the Netflix Marvel shows were also notoriously too long, and they were only 13. But again, it was because they had, for the most part, like 8 episodes worth of story that you were padding out to 13. Right. So the pacing was always a slog just to get through it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Don't get me wrong, I like Daredevil, but it was very clear that it could have been shorter and you would not have lost much of anything.
I would say yes to that, especially the second, like later on as it goes on, it kind of felt a little more padded. The first season was pretty good.
I never saw season 3, admittedly, because I hated the Defenders, and so I don't mean that in any other way other than like, no, I didn't just dislike the Defender. I actually really hated that show. I thought that it 100% was the wrong way to cross those characters over, and I was real excited for it. Mm-hmm. But I didn't think it earned its crossover. I thought the stuff with the hand was atrocious, and I really, really disliked the use of Sigourney Weaver in it. And that sucks because I love Sigourney Weaver. You finally got Sigourney Weaver, and you waste her and kill her off out of nowhere. So her character's totally not necessary. The best part of that show was Scott Glenn.
Oh, that's true about a lot of things. Scott Glenn's the best part of a lot of things he's done.
Well, you're fucking right. Dude, you know what movie
one of those guys
fucking magically great that we don't ever talk about? And it's movie that Scott Glenn is actually the lead of.
What is that?
Silverado.
That is a movie I have not thought about in years, and every time I think about it, I do like it. It's been a long time since I've seen it. But
Scott Glenn, Danny Glover, Kevin Costner,
Kevin
Kline, like that movie.
Dennehy
is Brian Dennehy, who's the villain, and of course it's Dennehy being a villain, so he's excellent. Jeff Goldblum's in it.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
That movie rules. Lawrence Kasdan wrote and directed it.
Yep, I remember that.
Like that movie came out in the summer of '85, like right around the same time as Back to the Future, and got totally handed its own ass for obvious reason. Back to the Future ended up being like the movie of the year. Yeah. But that was a summer of '85 movie that has gone under the radar ever since, which is baffling to me because the score is incredible and it is easily one of the best Westerns ever made.
No, I don't disagree. And also, you know who else is in Silverado would be on one of my underrated actors lists. I would also put him in that Ed Harris Hall of Fame, even though he's not as well known. Jeff Fahey.
Oh yeah, dude, he's
Love
excellent in it too.
Yeah, he's
Who was
great.
also in Lost.
Yes, he was. He was in Lost. There's a bunch of shows. He was on
Grindhouse.
Grimm. Oh, movies. Yeah, he was in a bunch of movies as well. Lawnmower, obviously
Oh,
Lawnmower
he was in
Man.
Psych also.
Psych,
He's
yes.
in one of Psych's all-time great episodes, actually.
He was in a movie that we have championed, Psycho 3.
Yes, he is. And he's great in that too. There's never a time when he's in a movie where I don't like him.
Right, and that's the thing. Even in bad movies, you're going to get something good from him. You can watch him and be entertained.
Oh, absolutely. He's just one of those guys, man. And that's what makes him so memorable, which is why, you know what else he's really good in? Machete.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, because he's the villain in he's one of the villains in Machete.
Mm-hmm.
Have you ever killed a man? I love that movie. I love Grindhouse. I love that whole universe.
Right.
It's so sad to me that we live in a world where we never got any sequels to Grindhouse. Like, we got Machete, thank God.
Right.
But we deserve to be in a world where we got like 5 or 6 more Grindhouse movies of different filmmakers doing their own version of that stuff.
Right.
And Tarantino at his theater in LA, I've gone a couple of times. And when I would go for around the 10th anniversary of Grindhouse in 2017, he programmed Grindhouse 2 and Grindhouse 3. And it was movies that he was like, these would have been Grindhouse movies had we continued. So the first one was Machete with Hellride. And Hellride's that's a fucking crazy movie if you've never seen it. It's like a throwback to the biker exploitation films. Good cast, fun movie. And then the second one was Machete Kills with the man with the iron fists, the RZA directed martial arts one. And that was Batista, Russell Crowe, I think Lucy Liu. There's a bunch of people in that movie. So that was another one of them. But I mean, look, even in that world, I could have seen something like House of a Thousand Corpses and Hot Fuzz. Getting those guys to do it, Edgar Wright and Zombie. Like, there's a world where they keep doing those and turning them out, and it just breaks my heart because Grindhouse is like stupid excellent. Planet Terror is so much fun, and Death Proof is an all-time great slasher film. I mean, it's a slasher film with a car, and it's so wild. It's so fucking cool. And if you go back and watch it, like, Kurt Russell's so great in it. It pulls the Psycho halfway through, which I think is so fantastic. If you've seen the movie, you know what I'm talking about. If you've not seen the movie, I'm hoping not to spoil it, but I want people to like discover it and go watch it. So I don't want to talk about that move. But the fun thing about Death Proof is one of the stars of the film is the star of Final Destination 3, Mary Elizabeth Winstead, the film we are talking about today here, directed by James Wan.
That might be the best segue you've ever done.
Thank you, my friend.
Well, impressive.
You like how I just like really went for it?
You did. I saw your eyes light up as you realized what you're doing with it. I'm like, oh my God, he's going to bring it back. Usually he has to bring it back. He's going to bring it back around. I'm impressed. I love it.
You know what, man? Every once in a while, I have my moments.
You do.
Today was my moment where I got to really like weave that thread because I could do it, and I really took the swing.
PJ, I'm going to double your salary.
Dude, I finally get 6 cents. Fuck yeah.
You've earned it, my friend. You earned it.
I am so happy right now. I could go get a gumball at the gumball machine.
Well, you can wait till after the show, my friend. You haven't earned the time off yet, so we got to finish.
Oh, that's fair. I mean, we got to get through it first. But it's so funny. So you and I never, for the most part, talk about these movies before we record because I like the natural conversation of it as it unfolds. Yeah. But last night, you and I got on a call before we recorded this. We were hanging out with our buddy Jeff. And I'm not going to lie to you, we started kind of doing the episode in front of Jeff, and I was not really anticipating it. But it actually made me excited to finally record this episode.
Yeah, I agree.
Because I was like, man, we're going to have fun. Because it's so interesting. You and I have talked about this. Obviously, the first one comes out in 2000.
Right.
They waited until 2003 to do the sequel, which is mind-blowing to me that it took them 3 years.
Yeah, it felt very strange.
This one takes another 3 years, which is beyond weird to me because they started working on it after the second one.
Right. Why is these things taking so long? Usually
These
horror
movies,
films have quick turnarounds, usually.
I mean, look, I would say I would almost give them a pass if I didn't think it had to do if I thought it had to do with coming up with interesting ways to do the deaths and things like that.
Right.
But here's the thing about that. The Saw franchise was turning out one a year.
And they were very inventive.
Yeah, and they were super inventive all the way around. So there's really not an excuse for these movies taking so long between.
I was wondering if they were trying to like learn from the lessons of like Halloween 5, for example, which had like that year turnaround, if that. There. And maybe they're trying to like go, let's sit on this and do it right. But I wonder also part of it has to do with having like no returning cast. Like it's all new set of people, all new set of things. They want to like take their time trying to develop the characters. I don't know. It seems, but I agree that just something seems off about it. It should have been like maybe a 2-year gap feels better. Even a year and a half feels better, to be honest with you.
But it really does. But so James Wong, who directs the first film, comes back and he writes the screenplay with Glenn Morgan again.
Right.
And, so it's a lot of the same people who've kind of been involved since the first one, which is good. And to your point of what you just said, they also decide that this is going to be a more standalone film. It's set in the same universe. Obviously, they focus on the fact that the events of the first film happened.
And the second, too. I've actually mentioned them quite a bit.
They do. But like the most part, the first one is the one that like continually comes up. They keep talking about the plane crash incident and these kids at the high school. But it's a whole new group of kids. And every time I go back to this one, I have the best time with it. And what's so interesting in saying that is that it's almost interesting that I feel that way because this is also easily the most mean-spirited film out of the first three. This movie goes out of its way to be just kind of cruel to the people around it in a way that's like not in the first two.
Right.
This one feels like, I don't know what it is, but it's almost like it takes the knife and just really twists it into these characters. And they also make it a point that comparative to the other two, most of the characters are not likable. So you're actually kind of rooting for death to get the better of them.
Well, in a way, like that's kind of a natural occurrence in slashers. I know, but
100%
Michael Myers, Jason, you start rooting for them because you have like less and less likable characters to begin with. Because once you get out of your final girl that first starts out the series, the first part of the series, then there's like the characters are it's almost like in a way it ties back to our discussion before, introducing totally new characters. They're not going to recapture the magic of your original people you might have been rooting for at the time. So you're having new characters and you don't want to root for them. So death is my returning character I'm rooting for.
100%. And so it's just kind of funny to look at it in that capacity and see it that way because this movie, man, is super fun. And part of what works for me with this one in particular is I love the film's opening kill. The opening kill being set at a theme park. And I got to say, actually, for a CGI 2000s monstrosity as it is, I really love the film's opening, setting up the theme park and like the whole opening card credits thing. It's actually really kind of charming in a weird way. I don't know exactly what it is about going through like the cast list beforehand and the way that it has all this theme park iconography and things happening on screen before we actually enter the theme park that really sets the tone and sets how excited I am because I love theme parks.
Right. Oh, you do.
I love theme parks. I worked at a theme park. I love theme parks. Theme parks are fun. And there's something really, we joke about it all the time when fairs and stuff come through town. For how often that these things are like deconstructed, constructed again, deconstructed again, constructed again. How do these things not fall apart more?
That's a good
Or
question.
how are they not how are they maintained so well when it comes to these bigger theme parks like Disney or Universal or Cedar Rapids or Six Flags, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera?
Well, those actually, I feel like they're safe. They should be safer because they're so freestanding. Like they've been around for a while. Like they get maintenance things. I'm more worried about
You
the
don't want to
travel.
hear what I have to say about that
Okay,
live
not.
on air.
Okay, maybe not. You know better than I do. My instinct is though that like when you have to bring it around and you have to rebuild it, it seems like to be more sense of
100%, right?
Right.
But to take that idea that we all just assume that a theme park should be safe, though, right?
Yeah, 100%.
It's the same thing about getting on an airplane. Getting on an airplane, we should just feel safe.
Yep.
We just should. So this idea that I'm going to a theme park and I'm getting on a roller coaster or whatever the ride is, in my head, I should feel safe. I shouldn't worry about anything going wrong. This movie leaning in on this idea that the theme park is actually not safe. This thing that you've so never thought of again as you're getting on a ride, going wonkily wrong and becoming what it is one of the all-time craziest smart moves of any horror franchise. And the opening kill is mesmerizing to me because it is a just shit show of, oh my God, everything that could go wrong while you are on a ride, from the vehicle's restraints unlatching to people falling out, to being hit by train cars, to being spiked, to getting their heads cut off by the bars as you're going by. Things like this movie does all the things that I have morbidly thought about as I worked at a theme park.
Right.
It's amazing.
I will agree. I mean, this first opening for the film, it's like that's what Final Destination has kind of done. Each of the films opens up with this grandiose kind of a sequence that it's kind of funny. Like you're thinking about like movies like Mission Impossible that has their big stunts or whatever, like films like that. Final Destination in a slasher universe has those kind of things. You go to see how is this over the top, like big ass fucking death scene. How are they going to do it this time? I think it's much better than a celebrity kill that happened in the Scream franchise. I'd actually prefer this big entry like this. This actually is very entertaining to me. And this one lives up to the previous two. It might be out of the first three, it might be my least favorite to a degree, only because two is so over the top and the first one was like the original, so kind of like you had to do it. This one feels like it might be slowing down a little bit, but overall it's still good enough for me.
It's such a big swing, and I see what you're saying. I think for me, it's honestly probably the number two as far as these go, only because, again, a part of it is I worked at a theme park, so I think about these things, and it's kind of like it hits very close to home.
Right.
The biggest detractor of the opening for me is only the fact that it's very heavily CG manipulated, and you can see it, and that's a limitation of early 2000s CGI still. And these movies are not made for a ton of money either. Like this is on the more expensive side as far as these ones was concerned, but it's not like you're spending Avatar money. Like Pandora looks like a real place. You know what I'm saying? Like, so I'm just sitting here watching it and kind of go, wow, it really is early 2000s. But I gotta say, Mary Elizabeth Winstead as Wendy is such great casting. She's always been very likable. She's someone I've always enjoyed watching in movies. Again, this is probably the first time I really remembered seeing her in anything as far as like a leading role. Because it wouldn't be until a year later that Death Proof came out. So that's 2007.
I think there's anything else I can think of that was before that really.
And I'm sorry, I keep sniffling, guys. My allergies are acting all sorts of fucking wonky today.
Sky High, she was in.
Oh yeah, and Sky High, because she's fantastic in that, and that's like 06.
Right? Yeah, I think it's.
So
I want to say 05, but just
okay,
about
05. So then this. But what's so funny about this for me is she's just so likable, and it was the first of the leads that outside of Sawa I could get behind because I like her. And
Yes.
you're pulling for her. And in the same way that the first one is kind of a who's who of like late 90s, early 2000s talent, this one having her and Ryan Merriman, and Merriman was like up and comer around this time, who they were putting in just about anything because they were trying, they were trying to
Right.
make Ryan Merriman happen. So to
Right.
have the two of them together in this really kind of puts it in a very specific place as far
Right.
as the 2000s talent and time is concerned. But Wendy as a character is really interesting because having her boyfriend being in the accident, and like then Merriman's girlfriend also being in it, and taking them out of the equation, and these two don't really get along, but being forced to work together to try to
Mm,
stop death was actually a really kind of different dynamic that we hadn't had, because it
agreed.
made it a little more personal, as weird as
Right.
that sounds. Because yeah, sure, people died in those other ones, but there's something about the fact that it was her boyfriend and his girlfriend.
Who was going to be breaking up with him, which is an interesting thing as well.
Mhm.
I actually like that he had a little bit of an arc. You don't get that much on these horror movies where he
No.
kind of started out like a douche. You think he'd be the typical douche character. You're like, oh, okay, this is this guy, but then he's like kind of forced into that position held by the boyfriend because the boyfriend dies, and you feel bad for him because he starts becoming more and more real. You see him actually grow. You see him regret that he took the picture of the girl's skirt or whatever. You see him like he made a promise to his friend he's going to take care of his girlfriend kind of thing. All these things are like you don't really get that kind of arc usually in a little horror film. So I applauded that for sure.
Yeah, I actually think as far as the characters are concerned, that these are some of the more well-defined ones, because even comparative to the first two, and especially the second one, these characters actually really work for me.
Yeah.
And that's a weird thing to say because there's not a lot to most of them,
No.
but I actually like them.
Yeah.
I like them quite a bit. And so this idea that they're all at this theme park and everything goes wrong really quickly and they all are kind of living with it right before graduation, again, very similar to the first Final Destination.
Yeah.
It's actually using that as a blueprint in a lot of ways,
Right. Agreed.
but it works because sometimes if it ain't broke, don't fix it.
Don't fix it.
James Wong coming back is a good choice in some capacities because he has a very specific eye for this franchise, and it's something you and I talk about kind of back and forth a little bit on our feelings on it, but it's true. He has a very specific vibe for the franchise. You don't have to necessarily appreciate it, and I don't mean you, but I mean like the greater you.
Right.
But he loves to lean in on the idea of songs playing
Yes.
before things happen, or like these. He really lives for the weird X-Files version of this, because again, as we talked about, this started as an idea for an X-Files episode,
Yes, it did.
but this in particular feels like he likes to lean in on that side of like coincidence and death kind of mocking you. This
Right.
song playing while things are happening, or just these little setups where you start to see what's next. And I love this introduction of the pictures in this one.
I liked it too. I thought it was a nice swing. It seems like so far in all the movies, I don't know how the rest go because I don't remember. I think I said I've never seen 4 and 5, but I like how each movie tries to expand the mythology in different and smaller ways. And I felt this one was kind of a cool way to do it. It didn't like betray anything from before. It was just a nice introduction. Like it felt like it worked in the universe. It didn't feel like it went back on anything previously said, which I hate when films try to retcon their own rules by throwing things out. This was like just a new thing. I'm kind of like, okay, it feels like that feels valid. It feels like it would be a valid part of this franchise. I like that. So
100%, because in the last one, you and I were big on the idea that people surviving the plane crash affecting the people around them was such an interesting idea, and that was like a natural progression of that type of storytelling. But this one, the idea that they could kind of see what was coming was actually super interesting.
Yeah.
In this idea of looking at pictures and seeing those things, it really works for me.
Yeah, because you know what it does? It does turn a little bit like the first two films. was all about the lead characters getting their visions. The lead character
Mhm.
gets their visions, they see what's coming, they get to stop it or whatever, and they have to try to stop death from happening to the survivors. In this case, it's just because of the picture thing. She doesn't have to just, you don't have to have all these scenes where Mary Elizabeth Winstead sees it and then the Ryan Merriman character goes, wait, what did you see? Because that kind of gets a little old after a while. Like it's kind
Sure.
of like a repeat thing. This way she has the pictures and they kind of figured out together. It's like, okay, it's an interesting way to make something new and still have it work.
It 100% is, and I think it actually adds extra drama too because now they see it together,
Right.
and they're always trying to piece together exactly what those moments mean
Right.
and how. It just really works as a construct. That's the best way for me to describe it. Like, it was such a smart way to build out and try to make that work,
Right.
and it's something that I kind of wish that the second one had done in hindsight.
Yeah, I agree.
But it works here, and I like that too because it also weirdly puts another kind of time capsule freeze frame on this because this is the very beginning of like the digital camera era.
Mm.
And so they're using digital cameras, and it just kind of put me in this place of, oh man, remember when that was like
That
all
was the
the
thing.
rage and you could
Right.
go through and now you're looking at these pictures in real time because if you do this movie 5 years before, you can't do that as easily unless they have taken the extra 24 hours to take the film to fucking Target.
Right, exactly. Or the 1 hour photo, as it were.
Right. 100%. So it's just kind of fascinating, actually,
Yeah, I do
that it
like that.
goes that way, and it works. It works very well. And so, because of that, I actually find that most of the deaths in this one, to bring this kind of full circle to my stuff with how mean this one is, in doing that, it makes the kills really great
Mm-hmm.
because, dude, holy shit, some of the kills in this are just fucking fun and wild. And one of my favorite things is that that the very first kill post all of it is the crazy stuff with the two tanning beds, right? And
Yes.
the two girls.
Final station I said to you, I said this last night in the Zoom, loves its fiery deaths.
Yes, it does. It loves its fiery deaths. But one of the things that I like is that when Mary Elizabeth Winstead's Wendy figures out what's happening, she tries to call them.
Mm-hmm.
And she's on the phone as it's all happening. It's actually edited in such a great way that it ratchets up the tension and it's really interesting. And then it does the fake out voice mail thing that we all did at least once when we first had cell phones. And she leaves the message, thanks for the invite. And she like stops and then she goes, I'm sorry, I'm too late. And it was the
Yes.
first time any of the characters ever out loud while something was happening, she knows it's happening.
Right.
And she has to live with it because she couldn't stop it. And we
Yes,
hear her say it out loud, and it's so great.
I
And it
agree.
works so well for me.
Agreed.
Oh, it's so good.
Actually, the funny thing is that what this film does also, speaking of deaths, but speaking of those two characters specifically, it does a good job of having your typical stereotypical high schoolers in horror movies. Usually they're not real fleshed out characters. They're basically just archetypes. But this film does a good job of combating that. It doesn't give them a lot of depth or anything, but like they aren't all exactly what you feel they would be. Like they're the ditzy blonde.
They're the
whoever.
ditzy California blonde.
But they do ask her, Mary Elizabeth Winstead, to go with them. Like they feel bad for her, kind of thing. And they still like in almost any other movie, they would have just been the absolute bitches the whole time, and they would have bullied her, or they would have like been nasty to her, and then they would have died. Or this was like they try to do a little bit different, which I kind of like. They kind of
I did too, and I mean, to your point, right? Like they're still very vain.
Yeah, absolutely.
There's that side of them that they actually thought they were doing something nice. And like when they're walking away, wasn't that so nice of us? Like, but it actually works because they try.
They're trying. Okay.
And you know what, man? Kudos to you for trying to be nice because, of course, now Mary Elizabeth Winstead's Wendy is looked at as the leper. Everyone sees her as the freak because they all saw her get off the ride. She was the one panicking, saying it was going to crash.
Right. Yep.
And so everyone's kind of looking at her like she shouldn't be there. She goes to pick up her diploma. She's not going to walk. So Merriman's Kevin is the one who goes, I've been looking into this. And I love this, by the way. I love that he starts to bring it up to her
Right.
in this idea of, look, this has happened before. I needed answers, and I thought you were crazy, but you're not.
Right.
But she shuts him down.
Yeah.
She goes, stop trying to make this better.
Right.
Don't bother me. Like we're not doing this. You and I are not a thing. And I like that.
You. Yeah, me too. And he comes to the point where she's like, you don't like me. And there's the line that I like, because he's like, I promised my friend I'd look after you. It was like for 3 minutes. He promised for the ride. That was it. He's not promised for you for the rest of your life. And it was a nice little switch to it. Like you feel Ryan Merriman gets like hit there. It's like he's doing this for his friend. It's like a memory for his friend in a way. And she just like basically cut him to the core. It wasn't like a mean thing as much as it was just kind of a she's lashing out, honest about things. Yeah, just kind of, it was a great little moment. You don't get these moments like that generally in horror, like little horror films like this, which I liked.
No, this I really think this is the most human of all.
Yes,
in a weird way. And I say that too is I've also said this is clearly the most mean-spirited, and that's actually goes hand in hand with what you're talking about, because the humanity that it tries to give these characters is actually really great, which makes it that much worse as you watch everything play out, because you're actually pulling for them this time.
Right. 100%.
Like you want these people to survive because you're like, actually, you know what? None of you deserve this.
Right. Yeah.
Because
they all do awful things. I want to actually mention right now, I think it's the best time to bring it up. One of my favorite characters in this whole movie is Ian Mckinley.
Yes.
Because he's such a very interesting character. You don't know exactly. He's very real because you don't really know. He's not the archetype all good or all bad. He makes the proclamation at the funeral where he starts talking about, they didn't deserve this. Like, where's God in this kind of thing? And he has this like he's the cool kid. But when things happen to him and he loses his girl, he becomes bitter and starts he becomes the almost like the villain of the side. But it's just not about a hero villain thing. It's about a real guy who is just reacting to the situation. He's not all good. He's not all bad. He just is interesting.
Mm-hmm. So I said this to you, and one of the things I really like about the Mckinley character in particular, this is the first time in any of the movies that one of the survivors is also supposed to be the thing that kills one of the survivors.
Yes.
And I love this idea that by accidentally saving someone, you also kind of write your own death warrant.
Yeah, because what do you do? If you know better, what do you do? I mean, you don't really know that at the time because she didn't really know it was going to happen, but
right.
It still makes for an interesting aside. And speaking of that, the nail gun.
The nail gun is one of the greatest kills in this franchise.
It's one of those. All I could think of was that Simpsons gif. Stop it! She's already dead. Oh my God. It was like, doof. That's the one. Usually, you get that like nail gun in the back of the head. Like, okay, that's it. This was. Doof, 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 doof. I'm like, oh my God.
Yeah. So there's this moment that they go to Mckinley and his girlfriend. They both work at like a Home Depot type, big box warehouse store. And Wong actually in this movie, we haven't really talked about it. The way he sets up a lot of the kills is really great because he does less of what he does in the first one with a lot of the long-term, like everything around it is going wrong. But he's really good at setting up stuff that matters to the kill.
Right.
But in a way that you're not anticipating. So McKinley is not very careful with the forklift. The forklift, he leaves it on. It keeps moving, and it starts to kind of wreak havoc. Now, granted, they should all probably hear that this thing is like knocking shit over, but, it's a horror movie. I just give it a pass, whatever.
Right.
But it knocks a bunch of things over, and McKinley's supposed to be the next one. Well, one of them saves him. It skips him, but it goes for the girlfriend right quick because of death. And she falls in front of this fucking nail gun, and it's right behind her head, and it just goes and goes and keeps going. It shoots her like 10 times.
I'm like, oh my God, dude.
And it's like it stops having any sound for the most part, other than the sound of the nail gun going into her, and so it's just like this thunk, 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 and you're just like, "What the fuck, dude?"
Oh my God, you're
And it
watching it happen?
stops, and her body is still twitching, and she has her hand up a little bit, and there's nails through one of the hand, like, coming out her eye. It's so fucking wild.
Right, it is. It is.
It's a great kill.
It's also, I mean, it's funny, obviously well done that it was the nail gun that Ian had been using just prior to that. So Ian's the one who put it down there. So it adds for nice little motivation afterwards for why Ian's even more fucked up than usual.
Even though he's blaming everyone else because he knows he's actually the one who caused it.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely.
But one of the things too that I wanted to touch on is that they are very smart in this movie in their usage of having Tony Todd come back, but we don't see him. But it just furthers the idea that he is very clearly death.
Yes.
And he's in the movie twice.
Mm-hmm.
I remember bringing it up to you because I remember you and I talking about it, and you were like, I don't really remember 3. And I was like, the best thing about it is it finally really comes all the way around on the fact that he is very clearly death.
Yes. Oh,
the
100%.
First time that you hear his voice is at the theme park, and he's the voice of the devil as they're getting on the ride. Because, of course, what we didn't bring up, the devil is like the mascot of this ride that they're about to go on. And it's like this big animatronic-y looking devil out front of it, which what perfect imagery.
Absolutely.
But for the movie's final kill, he is also the voice over the subway car station. The most unbelievable thing about this movie is that I could clearly understand what the person on the subway loudspeaker is saying.
That's a good point.
That's the one thing that this movie did wrong. In New York, if I am on the subway, I cannot understand anything that is being said by the subway driver in any capacity. Like that SNL sketch from the 90s about people standing on the subway. Yeah. It sounds like this, and you can't really understand the word that they're saying. That's true.
That's very
like
true.
That is actually 100% accurate fact.
Yeah, you see the subway, you're always looking at people trying to listen to that. They're always kind of like,
yeah, dude, it's why I started wearing headphones while I was on the subway, because ultimately it never mattered to me at the end of the day.
Right.
It really didn't, because I knew I was just never going to understand what they were saying anyway.
Absolutely.
But that's the most unbelievable thing about this movie. However, I love that they bring him back, even in a voice-only capacity, because expanding out this idea that the mortician was actually death is such a great idea.
I agree.
And to bring that full circle in that capacity, and the way that he starts to laugh.
Yes.
On the intercom is so haunting because Tony Todd. I needed this as a moment. And you know why? Because I think that the one thing that these first 3 do very well is they're all very standalone to their own capacity. Like outside of the second one, bringing back one character, like they're all movies about different groups and doing different things. But to take these central themes the way we've talked about, to build off of them, to expand on them, and to make sure that you don't overstep the thing you've already set up is so necessary. And it adds such an interesting dynamic, because now I can look back on it, and you go back and watch the first 2 and you're like, dude, oh my God, he really was fucking with them. And it was really him.
That's
and
awesome.
It's such a great moment. And if you're a super fan of these movies, suddenly you go, motherfuck, because you hear the voice and you just know.
Right.
It's so good. How did that moment affect you?
I thought that was like one of the best moments as well. Because like, again, same as you, I heard the voice. It's kind of like, okay, they're bringing him back. You always had that kind of that sense in 1 and 2 that there was something else more going on. He definitely knew more than they did. How did he know more? We never really knew. And we get that moment when you hear his voice that confirms exactly what you think it is. It's just a magical bringing things together. He is that returning legacy character that you need to give it a connection. And there's nothing better than a film series when it's connected. When it starts doing its own thing and it's not connected to the franchise anymore, it's like, well, why are we doing this? Why are we bothering this at this point? Because if it's not the same, like, I get there's anthology films. That can be done
Well,
that
that's a little
way.
different though.
But this is
Like,
not that way.
but this is
But
like,
this is not that. This is you're supposed to be connecting it, and just having more of a connection than just a theme makes it work for me. And this really drives it home, which is why I'm very sad. I mean, I know he's not in the fourth one, so that makes me very sad.
oh yeah, well, the fourth one's a trash heap, unfortunately. Like, spoiler alert to my feelings on it next week. I told Paul, I was like, I hate to break it to you, but like, we're gonna get to that fourth one, and like me, you're just probably gonna be like, why are we doing this? Like, I do not care for the fourth movie very much.
I've heard that. You're not the only person I've heard that from, so it is
Yeah.
like it is what it is. So
Look, anytime that you had Tony Todd and you don't use Tony Todd, what are we doing? What is this?
What are we doing here exactly?
Tony Todd, who follows me on Twitter.
Tony Todd
I'm fucking doing that. Yeah, Tony.
Really?
Yeah, okay. I never do this, and you know that, but this is like one of those weird moments of sometimes you and I have to have that conversation. This is on the level of when you were like, wait, Tom Cruise follows you on Twitter? Yes, Tom Cruise follows me on Twitter. One of the weirdest things that's ever happened to me in my life. Tony Todd follows me on Twitter. It was out of nowhere one day, and I was tweeting about Candyman or Hellfest. It was one of the two, or maybe both. Maybe I was just talking about it. But out of nowhere, Tony Todd followed me on Twitter.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So one of the all-time great horror icons follows me on Twitter.
Wonderful. That's awesome. Good for you.
I should really reach out to him.
Yeah, you should. We should have had him on this podcast if we could.
We really should have. Interview him, talk about Final Destination. I hope, you know what I hope? I hope John Watts brings him back in this sixth one.
He better.
He fucking better, right?
Better. Why wouldn't you?
If you don't bring back Tony Todd to Final Destination, are you even making a Final Destination movie?
No, you're not. You are absolutely
right.
not.
I'm gonna tweet that after we're done here. I think that need to put that out into there, because if we've learned anything, I'm really fucking good at willing shit into existence.
Mike Flanagan. We ever talked about that, did we? That's what we should have happened earlier on.
You see where I was going with
I totally see where you're going with that. Oh my God.
Mike Flanagan my boy Mike Flanagan is finally making a Dark Tower TV series. I have been willing this into existence for the better part of 4 years.
And I actually got tired of listening to PJ talk about it, because and I'm a guy who loves Mike Flanagan, loves Stephen King, loves Dark Tower. And I still was like, okay, PJ, we get it. I get it. I agree. I get it. I agree. And all of a sudden I came upon this thing, this tweet, and I was like, oh my God, PJ. Oh my God, PJ.
No one was more insistent that this had to happen other than me. And this dude is finally doing the Dark Tower as a TV show.
It's not even just the Dark Tower. The whole article I read, I always love the fact he comes out of Netflix after the Midnight Club is canceled. He goes and he's got a new deal with Amazon to create new things, and he's got the rights to the Dark Tower, and he wants to go back to cinema as well. So we have an Amazon Mike Flanagan. We have a Dark Tower Mike Flanagan, which is a TV series and 2 movies supposedly. And beyond that, even beyond that, he wants to go back in cinema in general. And I've been missing Mike Flanagan. I love Mike Flanagan TV. I've been missing Mike Flanagan in cinema. Dr. Sleep, give me that back, kind of thing.
I know.
So everything about this article, like, checked off every box I wanted to hear from Mike Flanagan.
I was so fucking stoked, dude. I mean, you saw I sent it. We have a little group message thing, and I was losing my fucking mind.
I don't usually call it the scoops. You guys get you're faster than that than I am. Also, I found this tweet. I went, oh my God, PJ.
Yeah.
And you're like, what?
I fucking, dude, I was so excited. I'm still excited. I went to the bar because I worked that day, and I was talking to some of the patrons at the bar, and I was like, they're doing Dark Tower. And one of the brothers who owns it, he goes, yeah, but like the movie was really bad. And then one of our regulars was like, yeah, like the movie was so bad, no one can do it right. And I was like, Mike Flanagan made Dr. Sleep, and they both stopped. And one of our regulars, I love this guy. He and I nerd out about like John Carpenter all the time. He's like you and I,
yeah,
but with a much younger child than you have, and just like a really good dude. I really like hanging out with him. And we were sitting there, and he stops and he goes, you know what? If anyone can do it, that guy can do it. Because I started to talk about Mike Flanagan. He goes, all of a sudden, everyone at the bar was like, yes.
Yes. Let's get it done. Get it done.
Yeah. And so the bar patrons are becoming my my barometer now, interestingly enough, when it comes to things, in a way that we talk about, like, my parents. The
Right.
bar patrons are my new version of that because, like, Indy was a perfect example, right?
Right.
All those dudes, the day that the Indy trailer dropped, I was at the bar, and I was like, "Oh, the new Indy trailer dropped," and I'm just, like, pouring beer and doing my thing. I hadn't even watched it yet. I mean, I'd already seen it, obviously,
Right.
regardless. And they're all going, "Yeah, but, you know, like, the last one's not very good," and they're being wrong about that, but that's fine.
Right.
And I was like, "Yeah, but guys like James Mangold, Ford v Ferrari, 310 to Yuma, like, dude is the goods, number 1 as a director.
100%.
But
Totally
number
agree.
2, it just looks fucking good." And
It
so
does.
they're like, you know, man, I don't know." Then they all watched the trailer. And they were like, the moment the music hit, they were like, "It didn't matter. We were there opening weekend." Like,
Exactly.
but that tells you everything, right?
Mhm.
How big is this that even dudes who are like, "Man, that last one," and then they watch the trailer and they go, "Yeah, but that music scene for it
Yeah.
again
I'm in. I'm
doesn't
all
really
in.
matter. Of course I'm going."
Exactly.
That's the
Everybody does.
power of Indiana Jones, guys. Come
Yes.
on. It's so good.
Uh, God, then they use the music trick that they've been using a lot of last years, taking down the themes and slowing them down and making them more epic sounding. And I do not get sick of it. I will listen to that every single time because it just ticks off the right nostalgia bones for me.
The Jurassic World one was one of the best uses of that
Yeah,
still to this
100%.
day.
Star
That
Wars
first
Rise of
Jurassic World
Skywalker.
trailer, dude.
Star Wars Rise of Skywalker is the best
Oh,
one for
yeah.
me.
But that first Rise or that first Jurassic World trailer, because it was the piano rendition
Right. Yep. That's me
and
too.
just the way that it played, and then like seeing the park again and the way that it worked, it just fucking blew my mind.
I get it, man. I get it. I mean, like, I know people have issues with Rise of Skywalker. Fine, I don't want to talk about that right now. But that trailer, when it has the music coming, it was like the last time we were going to see some of these characters. You had 3PO in there, Chewie was there, and everything else. I was like, man, holy shit, I got the feels on this one. And I still listen to that trailer music, just that trailer music. I'll put that not even the trailer. I just put it in my phone. I listen to it all the time.
That trailer also very rightfully does one thing that I think people overlook, and it was the thing that I was getting torn to shit about by Avatar Twitter a couple of weeks ago, where Avatar was trying to be like, look, it's the cinema event of ever and all these things, and they were like 100% trying to ride off of the Force Awakens
Right.
and Phantom Menace's marketing
Yep.
campaigns, and I was like, Avatar is not Star Wars.
It's not.
And it's not, in my opinion. We'll see how much money it makes, but like,
It might make a shit ton of money. It's still not the same impact
no.
as Star Wars anyway.
But Star Wars, if you remember that original Phantom Menace trailer, dude, and that tagline of every generation has a story
Oh God, yes.
or has a legend, and then using it again for Rise was such a brilliant way to like tie an entire another generation into this one, because seeing that line again, every generation has a legend, was so like, it unlocked
Magical.
something primal in me. In like, when I was those trailers started in 98, obviously, so I was 8 years old. That was the first new Star Wars footage outside of watching that shit on VHS we had ever seen, and that tagline like lived in me.
Me too. Same exact feeling. I was like, oh my god. I remember that.
Do you remember the first time you saw the Phantom Menace poster of Anakin with the Vader shadow?
The Vader shadow? God, I lost my mind.
Dude,
my mind.
I remember running up to and like losing my mind. I wanted it so bad. I've always wanted that poster. I've never managed to get a copy of it, but I've always wanted to put that poster up because I think it's that one, and then the Revenge of the Sith one that they did, where it was Anakin and his cape has Vader's helmet.
You're going there. I was going to say.
Yeah, I had that one. I had that one in high school. That one was on the back of my door. It was one of my favorite posters.
God, I love those. Oh, man.
Yeah. Sorry, I've told. This is me. I managed to totally derail us, but now I'm just being like nostalgic for trailers. Okay, here's a question for you, and I'm going to bring this around. As far as Final Destination is concerned, and in this movie in particular, this movie leaves no survivors, which is the first for this franchise.
Correct.
However, there are survivors that are still left after Final Destination 2.
Yes.
That were not killed off screen as far as we are.
As of this point, yes, correct.
If you do Final Destination 6, do you bring back those characters and do a legacy sequel tying it back to the second one and the franchise as a whole, or do you try to start fresh with a new group?
I think I start with Tony Todd, and that's it. Honestly,
I'm in the same boat.
I feel like first of all, those characters, neither of the surviving characters, were that great to begin.
No.
They're fine, but they're not very memorable.
One of them was Jimmy Olsen for a season on television.
Right. I'm not got affinity for him, and I do. We do. Spoilers aside, I do remember they were probably. I think they were mentioned as being killed off screen later on in the series. So we're just saying, if that wasn't true, if the survivors did happen from 2, if we were trying to do like a sequel.
Yeah.
But like I liked Ali Larter coming back in the second one. That made a lot of sense to me. I didn't really love Sal getting killed off screen like that.
I mean, I complained about that in our episode. I always thought that was a mistake.
Right, but it's the nature of this franchise beast that like legacy characters don't do well. It's not like this is Kirby in Scream 4, who carved out her own really big niche. This is kind of like a small niche. It's always death as the star, which is why Tony Todd makes all the sense in the world to bring back. I like to see him in a more physical role, maybe even take more of a role than he had.
Dude, what if he was the lead? What if it was from the Eyes of Death?
That would be a phenomenal thing to try. Great experiment. I don't think they have the balls to do that. Especially not with the first Legacy sequel. I think the first Legacy sequel is going to be like a Force Awakens thing where you reestablish the universe, you reestablish the themes, reestablish the basic thing. But then if that succeeds, a Final Destination 7 or whatever it would be from the eyes of Tony Todd would be fucking phenomenal.
I want that movie so bad.
I do too.
I want an entire movie about Tony Todd's death.
I do too. I'd love to see it. I'd absolutely love to see it. You could even like go back. You could even do it like Back to the Future style. Like you can like go back to the original film and like see him from the other side and kind of thing in a way, and like watch his journey throughout the entire franchise. It's great.
Actually, you know what? I would not hate a movie about how death became like death.
Maybe he's not the first death. Maybe it's kind of a title that's been.
Not to say that that's what they're doing with Candyman, but that's what they're doing with Candyman, and it really worked for the last Candyman.
This is the franchise where you could absolutely do it because you play with rules all the time, and so I think it would be absolutely fine to do it.
Yeah, I want a Tony Todd led.
Tony Todd led movie. I like that. I do like that.
Yeah, I really do. I think it's a mistake if they don't, and he's not getting any younger. So someone in Hollywood get that dude on the fucking phone lines and let's go. Let's make it happen. So I want to go to this now because we're kind of talking about it. We're talking about Tony Todd. There's not a lot of substance to this movie, but I love that this movie has the balls to kill its entire cast by the time it's over.
I do too. I want to bring up, since we're kind of talking about it, I want to bring up my one big negative about it, and I have a feeling you're going to disagree with me, but it's okay.
Probably, but let's go. Okay. Let's talk about it.
I don't love, I love that the characters are all killed off. I actually like that. I think it's a wild swing. I do appreciate that. I'm not a big fan of how it happened because I feel like that whole epilogue train crash thing, it was like trying for the best part of these movies are the opening sequences where we have the big death things. And it's like trying to jam a second one in there. I felt like that's the beginning of Final Destination 4. Like you only need one big thing per movie like that. When it just felt tired. Tired to have a second big event at the end to take care of the rest. Like we're doing the same thing. She's seeing another vision. Oh my God, it's going to happen. And she doesn't get off. So it makes it a new, actually, she sees a vision and can't do anything about it. And they all die anyway. Which I guess I like that overall, but something about that I was kind of like, really, we're gonna do another whole big thing to end it? I don't know.
I hear you, and I totally see where you're coming from, and I don't fully disagree with you, but you know why it works for me?
Why?
Because I really liked. We already knew that she was there. if the reveal had been that it had happened and she was standing on the platform before getting on the train and she doesn't get on and they avoid it, I would be more irritated. But I like that it happens and then we're stuck there.
Yeah.
And
Well,
it's also the one time we finally get like a big finale too, because these movies really have predominantly not had like huge endings like this.
yeah.
The closest being the first, obviously, with the stuff that happens in Paris.
Yeah.
But this was like I like the way it works. And I love that Death tricks them
Mm.
and captures them and goes, you guys all thought you could get away. But fuck you, I'm killing you anyway.
I will admit that if it was like you had said, like she was on the platform and didn't get on the train and she saved it, then it would have been absolutely worse. It would have been even
100%.
worse. 100%. So I do like the fact that she doesn't get to like isn't able to do anything about it, because quite frankly that is kind of like the theme of the series, really, like that you see these visions and you can try to do your best to stop it, but it never really ends up working out too well for you. Death always comes back in the end. In this case, it's really literally comes back in the end and kills you all. I guess I just wanted to see it done differently somehow. It was a good swing. It was a big swing.
It's a huge swing.
It just rubbed me the wrong way a little bit overall. I'm not going to say like it ruined the film for me, but I couldn't help but just like while I'm watching going, a little tired. This feels a little like a retread at this point. Like we're already going to have this one per movie. Like you're going to just try to shoehorn two in one movie, and it just a little much for me.
No, it's fair. I don't think you're necessarily wrong. It really does work for me, though. I gotta say, did you? I don't think you probably did. Did you ever buy this movie on DVD? Because I have an interesting addition for you on this.
Oh, interesting. No, I did not.
One of the cool things that they did with this one in particular when it hit DVD is it had a thrill ride edition. And it actually created a choose your own adventure style version of the movie while you were watching it. And you could actually try to change portions of the movie where the deaths would be a little different, or you could try to stop them before they happened. And there was even a version of it that if you hit all the right combinations before they got on the roller coaster, you got them off before it started. So it just ends. Like it was basically like a choose your own adventure book.
That's very weird. I mean, that's very cool.
Yeah, I don't know if you can find that stuff on YouTube at this point. I mean, I have to assume someone did, or you could probably find the DVD on eBay, but I'm sure it's also stupid expensive if it's been out of print. But it had a fun, like, choose your own adventure thing. And I always thought that was, of all the franchises to play with that, of course it was this one. Like, that just makes sense.
Huh. Interesting.
Yeah, so I remember playing with that a bunch. It also had like 2 full like documentaries and an animated short film on it. Like this movie made a ton of money, by the way. It was the highest grossing film in the franchise until The Final Destination came out.
Yeah, look at that. Yeah, 118 million on a $25 million budget. Almost 119 million. That's phenomenal.
Yeah. And then the next one, which is funny enough, is the worst one in the franchise, almost made 200 million. But like these last 2 movies, or these 2 movies in particular, made a ton of money when they came out. But this one, for me, the choose your own fate thing was just like such a cool addition, and that's kind of peak DVD release type thing, and being able to do that sort of thing. Like that was when DVD was in its heyday and they were really pushing the format and they wanted people picking stuff up. And so Final Destination being like, let's go even further and like play with people's fate and stuff like that was kind of fun.
Yeah, absolutely. I like the concept. I've seen different DVDs like that too. I can't think of any off the top of my head, but I know there was one that I can think of was just like that. And it was a lot of fun.
This was the big one for me because I had it. I played with it a bunch. You'd get stoned in high school, put it on with your friends, and just fuck around and see what you could do.
Right? Wasn't there I'm thinking of the Black Mirror episode had that kind of thing too.
Yeah, Black Mirror did it on Netflix as a thing,
which was very cool and very weird. And I don't think there's like anybody who got through every possible
no, probably not.
But that's a cool thing for it's new, not new, but it's an interesting way for creators to kind of like get engagement from their fans or get engagement from the viewers. So it's I think
100%. So it's just super interesting. So if you ever get a chance, listener out there, or if you haven't and you have that thrill ride edition, I'd love to hear from you. And if you ever messed with that feature the way I did when I was in high school, I mean, that was a long time ago. I haven't seen that DVD in probably close to 20 years. So now I'm going to see if I can find it. Maybe Zia has it. I got to say, man, you know what? We haven't talked about it. I love the town centennial sequence in this
Yeah,
movie.
I really did too. I
I
really
really
did.
do too. You know why? Because it feels big and immersive and puts you dead in the middle of this stuff happening in public in a way that we really hadn't seen like this.
You know, in a funny way, you mentioned it. I will bring it right back. I swear. Like, if I wonder if that's why I felt so tired with the what it train 180 or whatever, because this ending felt like a good climax. It's like a big, all right, we got it, we're finished. A bigger climax than any other films have had so far. It was like kind of a nice big immersive thing, and then also we went to the train. It's like, oh, really? We're still going here? This should be over at this point. Because I agree with you. I loved a lot of the immersion that we got going on there from couple different aspects. My favorite line is in this sequence. One of my favorite deaths in the sequence. Speaking of the favorite deaths, not only does Final Destination like its fiery deaths, it likes its crushed bodies from signs or in this case, it's a big banner thing. That's because that's, of course, spoiler. That's how Ian gets killed at that point. Another just great death sequence there. But yeah, I agree. Total immersion there.
Mm-hmm. Also, one of the things I really like in this movie, I love that there's an actual theme for Wendy, which is her not wanting to let go of control and not being able to control things. I thought that was such an interesting and very kind of poignantly pointed idea that the series really hadn't grappled with in any way that felt this fleshed out. Like her being the way she is made it interesting to me.
Again, that's what this film did. It took these little things that just added archetype, added little character arcs. Like Ryan, like I mentioned Ryan Merriman before. Marilyn Newman said exactly the same type of thing. They have these base characters, and they just gave little tweaks to them and gave them a little bit of a story to go. They never like really punch you over the head with it, but you notice it and you recognize it, and you do feel like you're more connected to the characters because of it.
100%. Also, can we talk about the death by vehicle smashing another vehicle and a dude getting a fucking blade to the back of the head?
Oh, that was good. That was a good tension death. Like, that's one of the things Final Destination really does well. Almost every episode or every entry has this really good tension death, and that was that. Because you see they get boxed in, the truck gets boxed in. You see the 18 coming down. You're like, oh fuck! You see the guy running after it. The same guy they almost hit earlier on, which makes it nice and ironic. He got rescued from death. I wonder if he eventually died. Because we know at the end too, everybody whoever's saved, they escape death. They're going to die in some weird kind of way, at least in this universe. But yeah, it comes down. You're like, holy shit, they can't get out. I'm like, the funny thing is though, the one thing about that is different is I don't think I would have kicked out the windshield. I just would have rammed the fuck out of the guy in front of me and saying, "Yep, we're just moving. We're moving now." And you're
honestly, I probably would have done the same thing, to be honest with you.
I'm gonna push you out of the way, at least to the point where I can get the fuck out of the way. Because then you're gonna turn around and go, "What's the fuck?" I'm gonna go, "Look at that fucking thing coming, dude."
Yeah. Did you get a little bit of Omen vibes too?
I did. Yes.
Because I was straight like, oh, they're homaging the Omen, like this idea that she might get cut by something like the truck and the build to that, only to go like a totally different direction. But like such a brilliant little homage that I thought was so good. God, dude, this movie's really fucking fun. I think it's the one that I like. 2, I think, is still the best one in the franchise, but I think this is the one that I actually could watch the most, which is again ironic considering I think it's the one that's also kind of the most mean-spirited, and I really haven't leaned into that as much. But there's just this idea that because everyone dies in this, and this one really, like, the deaths feel more pointed at the characters. Like, it's not random. All the deaths in this one in some capacity are tied to these characters in such a weird way. Like, the one dude is the football player. or the
Yes.
athlete and him dying by Bowflex, which is a wild fucking sequence.
That was, and I like it had the fake out death before the real death too.
Yeah. And, again, the blades to the back of the head, fucking cutting up your brain and shit, or the tanning bed, or one of the characters dying by nail gun that their boyfriend put down. Like, that stuff is all pointed because it all is built into the characters. And so that is so different to me than almost any of the more random things in the other movies.
Yeah, I totally agree with you, man, on all of that. I do like the rewatchability as well. I think that, like, I'm actually funny. We're having this conversation, and I'm like, it's almost a spoiler for my ranking, but I will say this. I'm almost changing my rankings at this point while we're talking. I love it so. Like, I love what we're talking about here, minus the ending, but I'll talk about that more when we get to the ratings, because I can't want to give it quite away yet. I think we're almost at the ratings anyway. Before I get to there, is there anything else you want to say about the movie? Anything else we haven't discussed? I will throw one out there. My favorite line that I mentioned before. I don't want to just leave that hanging. My favorite line is when Ryan Merriman's character is in that town immersion thing. And he's the guy who's dressed up like Ben Franklin with the kite. And the guy goes, "Where now? It needs a little lightning." And Ryan Merriman just stares at him and goes, "Fuck you, Ben Franklin."
Oh, so good. Fuck you, Ben Franklin. One of the best.
I love this kind of thing. That's a little stupid line, but it made me chuckle out loud. So that's what I can go there.
Yeah, look, again, to everything I just said, I think this is the most rewatchable. I think it's the most fun. I think Wong is a much stronger director this time around compared to the first one, because it leans in on a lot of the stuff that you and I talk about in the first one that drives you nuts, but he's grown enough in the time that in that 6 years as a director. Yeah. So this one has someone is walking behind you play a couple of times.
Yeah.
But it works every single time because that version of the song is actually like kind of creepy when you think about it. And the way it plays and is done here feels a lot more foreboding than it does playing the John Denver song.
I agree. And I like I think I mentioned the John Denver thing that I was overdone. This was done much more maturely and much more effectively to that.
100% it was. This is just a really fucking good movie.
I agree.
I always say that the second one is the best one, and I really believe that, but God, I could fucking watch this one all the time, man. It's just so much fun.
Let's get into our rankings. We're here. We're already there. Let's do it. I gave Final Destination, the first one, 6.5. You gave it a 7.5. Final Destination 2, I gave it 7.5. You gave it 8. What are you going to give Final Destination 3?
I'm going to give this one an 8 too. I think it's right up there with it. And, the more we're talking about it, the more I might be talking myself into liking it more than the second one. And that's a weird thing.
That's my spoiler. Like, I think initially, when I texted you afterwards, I said I didn't like this one as much as 2 for some various reasons, but I sat with it. I thought about it. We've had our conversation today. I think the ending really bummed me out a little bit as far as when I first saw it. I've kind of talked myself past it, especially with a little bit of help and thinking about some of the subtleties of it. I'm going to do it. I'm going to give this an 8 as well.
Hell yeah.
It's my favorite of the 3 so far. It is actually my favorite of the 3.
It's really fun. And I think it's the way that it uses the characters. I think it's the cast. I think that Mary Elizabeth Winstead is so fucking likable. You're really pulling for him, man. Like, it's just a fucking different movie compared to it.
Really is. It really super truly is. I can't believe I'm doing it. I'm saying this because, like, it's fun. It's very rare I can think of right now. I'm at a 3-2-1. Like, it's the original. Like, I like them more and more as I go on. I know it's going to tank now next time from what I've heard, but that's okay. Oh God, I think this is a phenomenal fun. I mean, it's not a great movie, but it's very, very. It knows what it is, and it does a good job with what it wants to do. I can't say anything. How can you say anything bad about that?
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. Just absolutely. This movie rules. It really does. Man, hell yeah. I'm glad that you and I both enjoy this one.
Yeah, There's something about it. I agree that it is definitely, at least, if nothing else, the more rewatchable. Most rewatchable of the three so far. It's kind of funny because I remember how much I liked the first one initially, but in this rewatch, it's definitively for me the least of the three. I'm all on board with this one.
Fuck yeah, dude. Fuck yeah. That's my response.
Okay. Well, that's going to be all for our show today. We did a great job with that. I hope you loved Final Destination 3 as much as we did. Leave us some comments. Tell us what you feel about it. Let us know what your ranking is right now. I'm all on board with this. So also, I want to let you guys know, of course, we mentioned it earlier, patreon.com/PLD projects. You can join that Facebook chat we're always talking about in here, and you can also get some extra content from myself and from PJ as well. If you're new on this channel, haven't been here before, hit that like, hit that subscribe. If you're listening on one of your special, if you listen to Spotify or Apple Podcasts, make sure you follow and give us a review, hopefully a good review, because that definitely helps us out as well. We really appreciate you guys for that. And come back for more content. We have Two Mediocre White Dudes on Film. We have Class Action. You have Crown Jewels, A Journey Through Queen. We have some trailer reactions, and we're going to have a Star Wars show coming up in February. So a lot of stuff is happening here, and hopefully you're going to come along for the ride. So where can the folks find you, PJ?
You guys can find me on Twitter and Instagram at PJ_Campbell. You can also find me over at Hive at PJ Campbell. I can't do the underscore there, and it still bothers me to this day. You can find me here hanging out, talking about all the things with PLD. It's a nice feeling.
Thank you, my friends. Likewise. You find me at Paul_Denuzio on Twitter. You find me at PLD on Hive. Kind of if Hive ever gets his act back together again, who knows? But yeah, that's a wrap for this week, guys. Next week is still kind of up in the air. We might take a pause on the Final Destination saga. We talked about doing a Christmas episode potentially. We'll see if that bears fruit. If not, then we'll just do Final Destination. But if we don't, then we'll the next episode we are going to take a break the final week of the year. We decided they're not going to have an episode after Christmas, and we'll come back after the new year begins. So it'll be one less. We need Two Mediocre White Dudes on Film episode this month, but I'm sure you can deal with missing us once. So yeah, well, as you know, as soon as we know, we'll get it out there. We'll let you know.
We'll figure it out, guys. We always get there.
We always get there in the end. Until next time, everybody, stay mediocre. Never underestimate the power of mediocrity.
Goodbye, friends.
PLD. PJ Campbell. Two mediocre white dudes on film. Because frankly, we know you don't have enough of that in your life. So we're here to give you more. And without further ado, here are Two Mediocre White Dudes on film.